Today I ducked up by ruining my twin sister's wedding. TLDR, I ended up wrestling naked with a venture capitalist in a $10,000 suit on a dirty bathroom floor beside an unconscious IT professional, while my family and friends were either egging us on or trying to break us up. The day before my twin sister's wedding. Hadn't seen the majority of my family for about 5 years because I've been working overseas for an evil media conglomerate. Aunts and uncles all look older, more weathered. Cousins are taller. Most of them have grown from such delightful children with rosy cheeks unfurling in wonder and fascination into self-absorbed teens with forks angst dependency. This generation can tell, force feed hundreds of people their inner angst by either posting Nirvana lyrics on Facebook or sharing a 50s country love ballad that only they find kitschy and awesome because they found it on Spotify. This sister getting married, Adeline was kind enough to find little formal jobs for her little cousins to do at the wedding to make them feel somewhat less alone in their painful solace that is their life. She said it was enough of a present for me just to be there as I had to endure the expense of a business class ticket and embarrassment of defecating in mile levy somewhere over the Pacific in the midst of a Xanax rage. Now I don't particularly care for the particulars of those in particular that don't particularly care about mine. Namely, Simon, Adeline's very soon to be husband that I hadn't even met yet. Well, I met him earlier when he asked me to get off the phone because he needed it for business and that I should ask the host's permission before I used it in the first place. This was in my father's office that once served as the baby room for each of my elder siblings and I. It was once of those moments when you know exactly who you're dealing with because you've done your ducking homework. So anyway, after this Simon guy told me off for using my own home phone, he would walk around while staring at me briefly each few steps. The wedding was tomorrow and a few of the elderly guests were retiring to the guest houses for the evening, while the core wedding procession of the young and fit decided to keep the beer and wine river flowing. Simon took it upon himself to wish the leavers a good night before locking eyes with me, as if to tell me to politely duck off as it's just family and friends now, bucko. Adeline was sitting next to him at the round table as he looked down at her and then back at me before repeating. I think it was then that he realized that the guy he'd been trying to belittle was in fact an almost identical genetic clone of the person he'd been ducking for the past few years. Adeline gestured for me to come over and one of my older brothers pulled a chair out for me and shook the ice of a beer can as he slid it across the table to me. I'm Grosvenor. You must be Simon. His little heart sank quicker than a stiff duck in a shoe shop. Sat across from me were the MC and best man. His name was Phil, but that's largely irrelevant because next to him sat quite possibly the hottest chick I've ever seen in person. You see, Phil was into computers, thus being unable to have sex without some redeeming features like money and a strong jawline. Phil had both, but only because I was 60% sure he had either tapeworm or blood cancer. There wasn't much of him. It looked like a bad fall might finish him off. It never occurred to me that they were together at the time. I just assumed she was a friend of my sister's that took being a self-conscious teenager to a whole new level. Now I should point out to you, now that my family lives on a big ranch farm in the middle of West Bumbleduck, which was also where the wedding was, so all the guests were staying in the homestead, sharers' quarters or the guest house. Privacy was a rare commodity. I was sleeping in my old childhood room top and tails with one of my brothers in the double bed. The hot chick was in the next room with Phil and some of the other groomsmen. That should been enough for the penny to drop, but no. Dad and I shared a long neck over breakfast as he looked to calm himself a little for the big day. I just said yes, because I have chronic alcohol dependency from being a journalist. The bright summer sunrise was lifting the dew off the lawn and the gentle breeze whipped through the gums as my twin began to start her long walk down the aisle with her venture capitalistic whole fiancé for the last time as a legally unbound couple. The details of the wedding aren't really salient issues at this point. What was at the forefront of my hubris was what I'd do to have my way with the girl in the second row. My brother said he'd crawl a mile from broken glass and asbestos to just be in her shadow. I thought that about as funny as it was sad. She was looking at me the whole time with those round green eyes of a Bond girl. Something you must only look at but never touch. The emerald lawn next door that the neighbor never let you plan on as a boy. Colossal sad eyes of a long-hearted mystic that harbored some sort of pain, but in the midst of such beauty, seemed to be the apt portal into such comfort. The kind of darkness writers and poets dedicate their lifetime to describe. They were looking at me. It was either love, lust, or the 7 beers I'd had before noon that made her irresistible. The ceremony passed in a blur with all the necessary pleasantries exchanged before the wedding party, and guests moved over to the marquee, where it waited with heated pool and bar. As the night descended into decadent and depraved display of everything wrong in the Western world, the drunk, high and generally ducked up party guests began to jump into the pool. At this stage, I'd like to say I held off for a while, until it became a thing, but in reality, I was one of the founders of the let's jump in the pool movement. The feeling of diving into a pool in a cheap suit is very liberating. It's like the feeling of finally making it in life without actually doing so. That brief moment when the screaming roar of worry and insecurities of life are silenced by the water above. I have a feeling that Billy Corgan wrote Cupid D-Loke about that very feeling. Then she jumped in. She came up for air almost instantly. I didn't need to say anything. She'd already had me captive since I first saw her next to Phil, the IT I was telling you about. She swam a little bit closer until she joined me beside the point in the shallow end where the extra hot water shoots out of the jet. As she got within an arm's reach, she just smiled a little and let the momentum carry her up to the wall. I could only just stare as she just said hi, and we began talking for a while. I told her I was going to have a shower, but I'd like to have a drink with her after got dry. So off I went back to the homestead, complete with squelching shoes and swollen pockets still dripping with chlorinated water. Mum always has a shut ton of towels about near the boys' rooms, so we can just get clean whenever. She always made the effort to make sure her boys were clean and well fed. I jumped in the shower in my suit with the idea of taking it off in the shower. As I thought that this would be a rare opportunity to do so, I allowed myself that pleasure. As I was about to get out, I felt a hand on a shoulder. I spun around in fright, as if you wouldn't, and it was her. The girl from the round table, the wedding and the pool. The girl who'd authorized each and every heartbeat since I first saw her. I kissed her, and she kissed me back even harder. She threw her other arm around me and pushed me back against the shower wall. It was like that first 60 seconds after to snort some coke a mate shouted you. Not even I can accurately paint that picture for you. The wonder and excitement, jaded with fear and anxiety, that only makes you want it more. You know your parents, friends, and God don't approve of what you're doing, but duck those people. This moment is just for you and her. Just for the both of you. Everyone has that flash of sheer self-indulgence and pleasure that you literally couldn't give a duck about anything else except that heart beating under your hands. The bathroom door swung open, creating violent vortexes as the steam and the cool summer breeze combined in a foreshadowing dance. Simon mustn't have cared about his suit either, because he suddenly joined the girl and I in the shower, but he wasn't there to party. He grabbed me and threw me out onto the tiles in all my naked sinfulness. Phil came in and kicked me in the back, but he was into computers, so it didn't hurt very much. I got up and tried to assess the situation better by trying to engage them in conversation, but they were having none of it. Phil hit me in the head with his fist, but again, because he was an IT, it didn't hurt very much. Then Simon did this German suplex move and threw me into the sink, which, as it turned out, hurt quite a lot. One of my older brothers came in and just king hit Phil and squared up at Simon before Abilene came in and burst into tears. I looked around the bathroom, but the girl was gone. Phil was in terrible shape beside the drain and Simon was huffing and puffing in his Hugo Boss suit. He grabbed me again, and we fell on the floor as the others tried to break us up. So there I was, wrestling naked with a venture capitalist in a $10,000 suit on a dirty bathroom floor beside an unconscious IT professional, while my family and friends were either egging us on or trying to break us up. My sister still hasn't spoken to me, and I'm waiting for my plane at the airport. I thought this would kill some time, and it has. Now that I've written most of the key things out, it just outlines the sheer absurdity of that weekend. Mum is extremely disappointed with me, but was heartbroken to see me leave again for another country. I had to leave in such a hurry the next morning that I didn't have time to see the girl again. I have no idea what her name is, but my dad and my brothers are on the case because they are brothers. I have no doubt that I'll see her again one day, now that I'm persona non grata in my own home. I don't know when that day will be, but the future is pleasantly cruel sometimes, like it was that weekend. The only thing I regret is that whenever people remember my twin sister's wedding, they'll remember her twin brother running some sort of naked fight club in a bathroom beside the laundry. If you're a twin, then you'll know what I'm saying when I say that twins have this sort of shining between them, a higher bond that can only be forged in a womb. I still feel uncomfortable now about it, but when that feeling goes away, I know everything will be okay, and I can go back to finding the girl.